Lesson 12. Marriage, Divorce and Single Life. About marriage and divorce, Jesus said the following. Mark 10, 6-12. But from the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female. For this cause a man will leave his father and mother, and will join to his wife, and the two will become one flesh, so that they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. In the house, his disciples asked him again about the same matter. He said to them, Whoever divorces his wife and marries another, commits adultery against her. If a woman herself divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. Jesus also said, according to Matthew 19, 9-12. I tell you that whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery, and he who marries her when she is divorced, commits adultery. His disciples said to him, If this is the case of the man with his wife, it is not expedient to marry. But he said to them, Not all men can receive this saying, but those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who were born that way from their mother's womb, and there are eunuchs who were made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. He who is able to receive it, let him receive it. End of passage. Jesus did not give a detailed explanation of what he considers to be sexual immorality. Some understand it to mean that marital unfaithfulness is a legitimate ground for divorce. Jesus also compared people who abstain from sexual relations to eunuchs, who were castrated men. He described three kinds of eunuchs: those who do not have sexual relations because of natural circumstances, those who do not have sexual relations because of the actions of others, or those who do not have sexual relations by their own choice. For example, some men lost their genitals because of injuries suffered in war, while others were castrated so they could serve in certain positions within a kingdom. In the case of Jewish women, it was typically their parents who decided whether they would marry. The Apostle Paul gave the following guidance about marriage, divorce, and remaining single. 1. Paul says that it is good for a person to remain single, or if widowed, to stay unmarried. However, to avoid the temptation of sexual immorality, he recommends that those who cannot abstain from sexual relations should marry. 2. He advises married couples not to deprive one another of sexual relations, except by mutual agreement for a limited time so they can devote themselves to prayer. During that time, they temporarily set aside physical desires to focus on spiritual matters. 3. Paul says that God commands believing husbands and wives not to separate. If they do separate, they should either remain unmarried or be reconciled to one another. 4. Paul teaches that if a believer is married to someone who is not a believer, they should not seek a separation unless the unbelieving spouse chooses to leave. He also says that the unbelieving spouse may come to believe in the gospel through the example and influence of the believing spouse. 5. He encourages people to remain in the marital situation they are currently in, whether married or single. 6. Paul explains that single people, widows, and widowers have more time and freedom to devote themselves to the work of God, while married people naturally have responsibilities toward their spouse. For this reason, he recommends remaining unmarried. 7. He also says that widows and widowers are free to remarry, provided they marry a fellow believer.